Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 26th, 2026 meeting of the Town of Barnstable's Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. I'm the chair, Christopher Lozon. This meeting is being recorded by the town, but in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, any member of the public is welcome to record the meeting as long as they make themselves known to the chair. Would any member of the public like to do so? Hearing none, we will take the roll, which it looks like our clerk is missing, so I'll call the roll. Um, Jeremy Shea, Frank Ward,
I'm here.
Chris King,
Here.
Jim Sproul,
Here.
Lillian Wu,
Here.
and Remus Pistor. I'm sorry, I forget your last
That's
name.
all right.
First?
Pistorius.
Yes.
Here.
And I am here, so we have a quorum. Is there any public comment? Members of the public here? Hearing none. Oh, there's Jeremy now.
There's Jeremy.
So we're all here. We can move on to approval of the minutes from our December 12th, 2026 meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
May I just offer one piece of discussion, not to take us off topic, but when you look at how things are presented to us, is that the norm? Like on that first page, total amount requested 3.95 million, and the first item is 5 million. That in the future, that when they present to us, that if there's a total to present, that the pieces below it would add to that, or is that the way it's always been?
I would have to look to see if that's how it always is, but I agree with your point. It should be tally up to a grand total there. Yeah.
Yeah, it says 3.95, then there's a 5 million, a 55 million, and it talks about 4 different years. And I think there's got to be a better way for people to present those things to us, but the minutes are, I think, fine.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. Jeremy, do you mind taking a roll call vote?
Most certainly. All right. Chris Lozon,
Yes.
Frank Ward,
Yes.
Lillian Wu,
Yes.
Jim Sproul,
Yes.
Remus Pascorius,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Great. All right, on to our first topic, which is review of the school department fiscal 27 capital project requests. I know we have Superintendent Ahern here and some other members from the school, so whoever wants to take the lead, go right ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate the introduction and opportunity to share the school's capital requests for FY27. I'm the superintendent, Sarah Ahern, and I'm going to try not to be too distracted, but my phone is buzzing with all sorts of decisions going down across the region for tomorrow. But I conveniently sent our notice out already. So
I just got the call.
I just got it.
Yeah, everyone did.
So there's no school tomorrow?
2 hour delay for tomorrow based on some continued cleanup on the side roads. So I'm joined tonight by Chris Dwelly, who is the Deputy Director of Finance for the school department. And we have Doug Bowlanger here, who is the Director of Facilities. And there's a new member of the team. Bryce Harper began with us in October, and he is our Executive Director of Technology, and there are some technology projects on this capital list. And so we will be happy to talk about the capital requests that we are making. We are continuing to prioritize health and safety and making sure that we're attending to our facilities needs as well as some technology needs across the district. I think there is, you received some materials, and I think there is maybe a spreadsheet for us to work off of, or I can display it if given permissions.
Yeah, if you could display it, that would be great.
Okay.
Did we receive information on this? I don't recall. I haven't received it, so.
It might be the spreadsheet that we looked at that was circulated for the last meeting of January 12th. Is that right?
I got the 137 pages from Gareth, but that wasn't on school. So wouldn't it be nice to have the school in like 1 page, 2 pages that we can see, or do we have to dig through that?
We can send the spreadsheet that you're seeing now on the screen to you, Frank, okay?
Thanks.
I think this is the extract of what was circulated for the last meeting. There was a 3-page Excel spreadsheet that was circulated at the last meeting. It was in PDF format, actually. But I believe this is the extract.
So I'll start, and then I will turn it over to Doug to talk about each of these projects. The first two are on the list, but are kind of proceeding in a kind of alternate pathway to the capital process. Both of the roofs, one at the high school and one at the intermediate school, have been accepted into a feasibility and design study with the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And so Town Council has recently authorized $350,000 for each of these for a feasibility study. The BHS roof had previously been part of a capital project, and the BIS roof is new. But a year ago in January, we applied to MSBA, and they accepted both of these in October. So they're there, I think, for awareness by and large, because we do anticipate possible replacements of these roofs in the future, but we crossed them out because it's not currently being requested as part of the FY27 capital requests. But we have HVAC replacement at BUES, our 4-5 school. We have some, and that's a very large project. There is a grant to support some electrification that would help to offset that. We have a number of facilities projects district-wide, a couple of district-wide IT projects, and 2 projects that came forward more recently under sort of emergency circumstances, which are the 2 at the bottom, which is why they don't have priority listing there. I'm going to turn it over to Doug to talk about the facilities projects.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. I guess I won't really go into too much detail on the BHS and BIS roofs, except that the objective of these projects, both these projects, are to replace the entire roof on each of these schools. The high school roof is extremely dated. It's been nothing but a patch job and repairs. It's causing interior damage, and the same is for BIS. Some interior damage in there on some walls and ceilings. So we're very excited to hopefully move forward with those projects. I will jump to the BUE HVAC. This building, as we know, is probably one of our most recent or newest buildings, even though it was built in 1994 and 95. But the HVAC equipment has exceeded its life expectancy. It's basically original to when the building was built, and it needs to be replaced. The Commonwealth's Indoor Air Quality Assessment details numerous deficiencies in the system. This building has had its trouble. I think right from the gate, right out of the gate, basically almost 10 years into it, we started having problems with the HVAC in this building, the moisture content of the building. So to do this correctly, we are assessing and looking at completely renovating the HVAC in this building. And as Sarah mentioned, we are looking at some new grant opportunities and going all electric in this building. So we are looking at new efficient ways of doing things. So that's pretty much that one. We're looking at design, drawings, and going out to bid by hopefully May and awarding in June, starting construction end of June into July, and going over the next 2 summers with this project.
Hey, Doug, Chris King,
Any questions?
Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No worries.
on the BUE HVAC, do you think that was, since it's only really been 10 years before problems started to show up, do you think that was an original design problem that plagued the entire HVAC, or was it an equipment problem that just needed to be replaced?
I don't know if it was necessarily the HVAC design in its whole. I think it was a lot of the building design. The building was designed to be the most efficient. It was designed to be one of the top new efficiencies for the school. It's a double envelope construction at that school. But a lot of factors come into play with it. But the HVAC, being that it's beyond its life expectancy, it just has a lot of problems. I mean, the chiller's been replaced. That was the beginning of the Band-Aid, which they thought was a problem. But of course, putting chilled water through that building in the summertime doesn't help the building either. So it's created a lot of problems. There's been a lot of issues that need to be addressed. And like I said, 10 years into it, they started having moisture problems, condensation problems. I mean, it was a bad design, I think, from the onset for that location and that building.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question, Doug. You
Sure.
were talking about looking at a grant possibility. How much would that subsidize the replacement?
Right at this time, we're looking at a grant for about 2.7 million, and that's a reimbursable grant. We are looking into other opportunities there and other grants, and there's a lot of things that we're learning that if let's say this campus, being that this building and possibly West Villages became an all-electric campus, it would actually open up a lot of other grant opportunities for us. So we'd kind of like to lean in that direction for these 2 schools.
Would it be possible that you'll be getting more than one grant?
We would love to have that possibility. We do have Sean Hogan looking into other grant opportunities for the school, but it has to still fit within our direction in this project. I mean, sometimes a lot of grants kind of force you into the direction they want you to go.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on BUE? All right, I'll go on to the BPS mechanical upgrades. You may recall, you may have seen this last year. This is a typical, I think this is our second year for this BPS mechanical. When we say BPS, it means district-wide, and it's the mechanical upgrades to take care of plumbing, pumps, plumbing, heating, boilers, boiler upgrades, that basically, some of the things that are in the CIP cover that are larger than our operating budget could handle. So it's been bringing the district up to speed and more efficient repairs versus Band-Aids. So that's what that CIP is all about. And now you're going to see the next one, which is BPS, again, district-wide HVAC repairs. This is for those components. It's not repairs per se, it's components. When something completely fails, either a blower or different components of the HVAC system. This is to make sure that when we replace them, we're upgrading them to be more efficient for the school. So that's that CIP. I know I'm kind of running a little fast on those two, but now I'll go into the BHS locker room renovations. This one's still something we're discussing and debating on. This would be a renovation to the high school locker rooms, basically the showers. So we're looking at that to bring them up to modern standards and to be more inclusive to all. So that's the BHS locker room renovations.
Yeah, can I ask you a question on the locker room?
Sure, Frank.
Do any of the kids take showers there now? I haven't seen a kid take a high school shower in 15 years. Maybe
well,
20.
that's what we're still investigating, and I think Sarah can speak a little bit. Dr. Ahern can talk a little bit more about that. I mean, if it's more of a state regulation that we have to have them, but it's when we talk about it being more inclusive, I think that the gang shower setup is what kind of holds back a lot of the use of them. So we are looking into it. We're not breaking ground or putting shovel to dirt as of yet.
Yeah, I'll chime in. I think it's a great question. I don't think that high school student showering is a very common practice any longer. The locker rooms do have toilets and sinks and urinals. So there are other, functions that they serve. And then parts of the locker room area are also changing spaces, and there's coaches' offices in there. So the locker room serves multiple purposes and functions. There are team rooms in there as well for the teams to meet during halftime, for example, for basketball games. And so, in general, the renovations would kind of cover all aspects, and we bumped it from FY27 to FY28 to do a little bit more research and a little more design work to kind of figure out what the necessary direction is, because we do wonder about whether we need to or would want to replace the shower facilities.
Correct. The dozen or so middle school or high schools that I've been in, all the locker rooms are storage areas now. And
so they definitely are at the elementary level, and then you're correct. I think some of the middle school is starting to use it that way, but we're not going to make a dramatic change until we know exactly what the use is.
So, yeah, the locker rooms at the high school are definitely not used as storage areas. Students store a great amount of equipment in there. If you're on the lacrosse team, that's not something you're lugging around. I think it's a valid question about the showers, but I can confirm that they are extensively used year-round by students.
Yes.
The showers are used at Barnstable High School.
No, I said the showers is a good question. I do not know that the showers get used, and I'm frankly a bit skeptical that they would be used. But other than that, the use of the locker rooms is regular, daily occurrence, just not for showers.
Agreed. Correct. I agree. Thank you.
Any other questions on these? Sarah, did you want me to continue on, or do you want Bryce to jump in on 7 and 8?
Continue on, and then we'll go to 7 and 8 for the IT projects.
All right, then we'll skip down to number 9, which is a BPS masonry repair. Again, BPS meaning district-wide. This is so that we can address many masonry issues across the district. We're finding that it's a lot easier to come up with a scope of work, put it out to bid, and address multiple school areas or schools versus just getting somebody to come out and just patch or repoint, one side of the building or whatnot. So that's what this CIP is about. And it's a lot of needed repointing across the district. It's a lot of masonry work that's needed, even at entrances, some of the abused areas, but that's what this CIP will be addressing across the district. And then the next one is BPS HVAC DDC. This is your direct digital controls across the district. And this is this particular CIP will complete the remainder of the schools in the district to upgrade a DDC. These DDC controls are more efficient than the pneumatic controls, which can lead to significant energy saving, reduced maintenance costs. The DDC controls are more reliable and can allow for more precise control of temperatures and humidity. It can also enhance indoor air quality. As of right now, we have completed High West. We've just completed Centerville, and now we're at the high school as we speak. This particular CIP will take care of 3 remaining schools because keep in mind, we're putting on new HVAC at the intermediate school coming this summer. And then, of course, the HVAC project that I mentioned for BUE will have the DDC already in them. So this particular CIP is just talking about the 3 remaining schools, which I believe would be BCIS, BWB, and West Villages. And that'll complete that project. And then the entire district will be on DDC. Any questions?
Does this system pretty much eliminate the chance of frozen pipes?
I don't know about that. I mean, some of these schools are.
Do we have a way to monitor the temperatures in the building so that if it's...
No, we do. We did that this weekend. Right now, we can monitor most schools. The only school right now that I don't have online is BWB. And we can monitor it all online, all through Airmasters. I believe it was last night before bed. Both myself and the deputy director checked all the temperatures at the school. So did our in-house HVAC guy. So we can read temperatures. We just can't really control them as precise as we'd like to. The new DDC controls will allow us to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, number 11, BPS paving. This again is district-wide. It's about basically taking care of a lot of our paving needs, kind of like the masonry CIP. It's just we've been finding it's going to be a lot easier to put together a scope of work, talk about multiple schools, put it out to bid, save on some money on that way by combining them. So that's what this CIP is addressing. And many of the areas of the parking lots need repair and resurfacing. There are some sidewalks that could use a little bit of help, which are causing puddles at the main entrances. So we're addressing all those areas, and that's what that CIP takes care of. Public address system, I'll leave that to Bryce when he talks about his other 2. And then I'm going to go down to the High West Elementary heat conversion that Dr. Ahern had mentioned we added. The Highness West Elementary steam heat conversion, hot water heat. This particular building, when it was built, another one that was built as at the time, it was considered very efficient back in the 60s. This school was built on a slab with crawl space tunnels underneath it. But in that slab is all the steam pipe. And all the steam piping is now slowly corroding. And as it corrodes, it leaks and causes damage. And we have to jackhammer up the floor. And there's no really way to repair it so much as we cap it. And we've already have a couple ends of this building that have been capped. And electric heat has been added at the far east end. And then also a section over on the west end of the building. I'm being told by those that have consulted on this, that this is basically it's a ticking time bomb, and this particular boiler and this steam heat system, if it was to fail, and unfortunately on this particular school, this is the only heating system. If this was to fail, the whole entire school would have to be closed down until we found an alternative emergency way to heat it. So we're trying to be proactive. We've been band-aiding it and patching it and repairing it, and if it's not addressed sooner than later, it's going to become an emergency situation. And that's what we're looking to do, is take care of this and get it corrected and taken care of. Again, this would be, if everything goes well, we'll have drawings by the spring. We'll be modifying it this summer and hopefully up and running by the winter season of 26-27. Any questions?
Of course, I have a question on everything. Have we considered mini splits? So you have cooling and heating in super
Actually,
efficient?
mini splits, sorry to interrupt you, but mini splits are actually not the best for air quality. They can handle, a mini split could handle like an office or a small space, but for our classrooms, we've been told by our environmental engineers and consultants, as well as others, that it wouldn't be the correct way to go. These also have UV.
Hold on. I'd like to see that report. It says that
Okay.
you can't, because how big are your classrooms?
On the size, probably.
Yeah, it says that a mini split can't do it.
Well, they're just saying that it's the air quality of it's not circulating the air. It's bringing any of the cool air or it's bringing in warm air. It's not circulating back outside.
Okay. So
You're following
the
me. I mean,
majority of the homes in America that are putting it in mini splits wouldn't pass air quality?
well, no, you have your doors and windows and you're opening and shutting and no, they're passing air quality, but they're saying with the bodies in the room. Like take for instance, we were walking with our environmental consultant, and I went to one school and she had put books across her univent. And the CO2 levels were extremely high to the point where they wanted to basically, and then I said, can we just move the books and come back to this room in 10 minutes? So we moved the books, we cleared the room, opened the doors, we came back, air quality was totally better. It was just filled with all of those bodies, all that teenage, breathing, and the air quality was not good in that room just because she had blocked off the outside air.
I agree. You need some outside air, but I'd love to see that report that says that you can't put a mini split.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
We can share that.
Thank you.
Oh, where was I? Any other questions? But again, and sorry, Frank, I'll just add that the High West has univents in all the rooms, but they're forced by a steam coil heat system, and we'd have to convert that and change that. So these univents are in almost all the outside walls. It'll bring outside air in, it circulates the air in the room. I mean, this is just taking care of the boiler and the steam itself.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yep. All right, and then the last one that I'll talk about is the BPS door and hardware phase 2. This door and hardware project, we're basically underway with 4 schools. But when we went out to bid for this project, and as time goes on, and this project kind of took some time developing and getting out to bid, we had to separate out 3 schools from that project. And this phase 2 would take care of those 3 last remaining schools to take care of replacing rotted and damaged doors, updating some hardware. But this will also include taking care of visitor management in the last 3 remaining schools. And those 3 remaining schools will be Centerville, West Villages, and BWB. There are a lot of the doors, again, we've been patching, repairing. They're rusted, they're in rough shape, and this is for the safety. So this phase 2 on this exterior door project would complete that across the district. Phase 1 and phase 2 did not include the high school. The high school, at the size that it is, the high school would be its own door replacement project. But the high school at this time does have the visitor management system at the main entrance. And I believe that's it for me, and I would turn it over to Bryce.
Sure thing. Yeah. So if we're looking at number 7, so IT network infrastructure replacement. So it's not really wholesale replacement of all the stuff inside. There's been sort of ongoing maintenance over the past years to sort of make things functional. But what we haven't done is sort of spent the money to make things really redundant. We have a big district and a lot of schools. And right now there are several places where if we would have a catastrophic failure, either of some particular equipment in our racks, or if we had issues with fiber being broke at the pole outside a particular building, it would bring down all the other 8 schools. So part of this is sort of building out and making things modern. The other thing is probably 7 of the 9 buildings were built without the idea of internet in mind. They were built pre-internet. And so we've got to go back and sort of retrofit those to fit and just make things, because as we look at things today, a lot of the stuff that we want to do in the classroom is all network based, obviously, or internet based. And then a lot of these new, even like clocks, we're looking at new clock systems. The clock systems are like network controlled and network powered. And so we want to just make sure that we have everything that we need to make all that stuff work as we move forward and try to modernize our classrooms. And so this is a multi-year plan. We've got a bucket of that money now. We're acting on it now. And then we're also leveraging FCC and E-rate to get discounts on that same kind of work where we can. It's a little bit limited in what we can do, but there's certain areas that we can get pretty deep discounts, and we're making sure we're doing that now. So we just closed and ordered some equipment on E-rate funding from last year, and then we just opened our 470 in our 28-day bidding session for 470 for next year, and with this money, if it approved, we'd be to leverage those E-rate approvals with that. So, do you have any questions about that? The next one is number 8. So IT security camera upgrade. That's sort of the same kind of thing. We've got a pretty big network of security systems and cameras. It's more than just cameras, but it's also door and access control and that kind of thing. And so we've got, I think, 386 cameras total across the district. 271 of those, well, 220 some of those basically are they function, but they're not getting any updates. They're not getting moved forward. They're not getting patches, that kind of stuff. So we're going to make sure that we have modern, updatable, safe equipment to use across the district, and also that if we, having a camera that's, was great when it was purchased 6, 7, 8 years ago, but now, you can see that there's an object there, but you can't tell what that object is doing or handling. So that doesn't help us in terms of, providing that to the police or handling internal disputes or that kind of thing. So the first phase of this would be going through, and that's the phase that we're in now, is to going through. Actually, we have a walkthrough tomorrow to go through and adjust and assess what we have and start rolling that over, getting new servers and that kind of stuff in place. And then these next phases into next year and the following would be after we make that first pass of getting everything modernized, we go back and just make sure that we don't have any gaps or any blind spots. Make sure we fill those in all internally, and then we would start a round of exterior camera updates. So making sure we have eyes on parking lots and other facilities, fields, sporting areas, playgrounds, stuff like that. So we've always got eyes on all that stuff. So if anything were to happen, we ideally wouldn't, but if it did, we've got eyes on all that stuff, and we can pull up that footage. Any questions about that stuff? The last one is the public address system update. So every building currently has a paging system. I would say the majority of them don't work all that great, or not very reliable, or have dead zones and that kind of thing. So one of the things, this was pushed forward and approved, I believe, in the 24 CIP cycle or 25 CIP cycle. So it's been sitting around for a little bit. The problem, when I sort of inherited it a few months ago, the scope of the money, so it was $757,000. The scope of the money was pretty good, but it was specified to only be BHS and BIS, so the high school and the intermediate school. And so I think the bucket of money is fine, but we're just trying to rescope it to be district-wide. And so what I'm just trying to do is sort of push the whole thing forward from this year into next year, mostly just to readjust what we're going to spend, to document what we're going to spend it on. But what we're doing is staying the same. It's just where we're doing it needs to change, and so that the CIP that's sort of voted on matches the work that's going to actually be done. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same as it was 2 years ago when it was approved. And I think that's it, unless somebody has any questions.
Just one question, Bryce. Chris
Yes,
King. There are companies that tie together smoke and vape detection with the camera detection. Is that something that, I mean, of course, you don't want cameras in areas where you can't have them, but
yes,
those systems are tied together. Is that something that
yes.
the
And so you
schools
can basically, you don't want cameras in bathrooms, obviously, or places that are private where you might want to have a vaping sensor, but you can have cameras outside of those areas, so that basically if one gets triggered, the other one gets notified, or they're time stamped together. And so that you could sort of look and see, well, who came down that hallway, or who came out of that facility nearest the time that the vape sensor went off. So yes, that stuff is all built in together, and we have lots of options in terms of the systems that we're using. This is the first sort of wave at this. We're really just trying to get a foundational layer, but I just did a bunch of these same projects in my previous district, and we were adding radar and movable cameras and all, you can do flashing lights and noises and all kinds of stuff to deter people being in areas that they shouldn't be. So it's something the system will grow with us. It's sort of right now we're just trying to get this foundational thing that everything is rock solid across the board. And then in the next phase, we can sort of see what we're missing and what we want to do after that.
Great, thank you.
There's a lot
of technology out there.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
I have one comment. I think it's wonderful that the schools have decided to do so many projects on a district-wide basis. It's efficient, it's financially probably the best, and it gives the district an opportunity to track all of the maintenance that has to be done. I remember when we used to have projects one at a time. And so this is a terrific improvement.
Thank you. Doug, in particular, has been doing a lot to rescope the projects, and it also allows for kind of better ongoing maintenance and upkeep when you have the same vendor, kind of providing service to the post installation, providing services. So thank you for noticing.
And I'd like to also add, Sarah, that last time when we met Doug last year, you were just getting your sea legs and learning all about the projects. And I would like to commend you for all the hard work you've done over this year to be able to present to this level of detail. It's very much appreciated, and the hard work you put into it is obvious. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
All right, great. Anything else from anyone? All right. Well, we appreciate everyone's time, and thank you for that presentation.
Thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate all of your interest and questions. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm gonna have to step away for a minute. Jim's gonna take over as chair until I get back. So thank you guys.
Jim, you're muted.
Next on the agenda is a review of the CWMP funding model, Mark. And I think we're done with school committee at this point. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Go out and shovel snow.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jim. Yes, so I just wanted to update the committee on or present to you that the CWMP funding model that we put together that just measure the financial solvency of funding for that program. I believe I sent you all the Excel model last week. On that assumptions page, it's set up so that on that assumptions page, you can change those assumptions, run a lot of different scenarios, basically performing a sensitivity analysis based on, what assumptions you choose. And so if you'd like, I could call the spreadsheet up and give you an example of how changing the assumptions can impact the model, if that's helpful, so that eventually we will review this again. The CFAC has reviewed it once or twice in the past, has written a report and provided it to the town council on their review, basically doing a sensitivity analysis. I think they chose 5 different scenarios the last time, And those are in the report that I shared with the committee members as well. So let me just call the model up here. And let's see. First, I got to open the file. Is everybody seeing my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so excuse me. So what we have here is are several assumptions, quite a few different resource assumptions here, or revenue assumptions. What's our general fund contribution going to be? What's our investment rate of return? What's the growth in the annual meals and rooms taxes, the growth rate in those taxes per year that we dedicate to funding this program? What's the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund subsidies going to be, and so forth? And so you can change all of these assumptions. And then moving down into the expenditure assumptions, we have a few here as far as salary growth and benefit growth, because we have about 20 employees who are dedicated to working in this program. And so we have, over a $3 million operating budget just for personnel that are managing the implementation of this program. And we also have an assumption in here for construction cost inflation and a borrowing rate through the state revolving loan fund, which we are using to finance all of the projects that have been approved to date, as well as anticipating going forward. We are continuing to expect participating in the state revolving loan funds financing program for all of these projects, as opposed to going out to the general obligation bond market. And so we have down at the very bottom here where it says appropriate fiscal year projects, we can set that flag to either yes or no. And you can see these are the dollar amounts with inflation built in right now at a 5% inflation rate. These are the dollar amounts that have been submitted over the next 5 years from the Public Works Department on the next round of projects for the CWMP. This graph below measures the solvency of the program. The object here is to keep the green line above the red line at all times. Those are the available resources from year to year, and the red line shows what the subsequent year's commitments are. So we want to have in our treasury resources that exceed those subsequent year's commitments every single year, because we have to have those funds in order to appropriate the financing necessary to pay the bonds back, to pay for the staff and the benefit costs associated with the staff that are implementing this program. So this model has factored in all of the expected debt issuance costs for all projects that have been appropriated by the town council through fiscal year 2026. So it includes the FY26 and prior year projects. Those projects exceed to date as there's a list of those projects here on tab 10 called appropriations to date. You can see we've exceeded $300 million in appropriations to date for this program. And so if we were to go through here and start changing some of these assumptions, you can see how the chart here will change as the assumptions change. So if we wanted to, for example, say yes to appropriate the fiscal year 2027 projects, we would just choose yes. And you see those lines get a little bit closer together because we have more debt service that we're going to have to fund associated with those FY27 projects. And so they get a lot closer together, but still the green line exceeds the red line on an annual basis. And so we can go forward with the assumption that we're going to approve the FY27 projects with no other changes to the program. We have the resources in place based on these resource assumptions up here that we're currently using to fund the FY27 projects. The problem comes into play when we say yes to the FY28 projects. Now the green line falls below the red line because we got another round of service that we have to provide for on an annual basis for the borrowings that we're going to take out to fund the FY27 capital program. And so, and you can change all of these to yes, and you can see the deficit gets worse and worse. And at this point in time, we have about $450 million of outstanding loan. It peaks at $450 million of outstanding loans around 2039, 2040. And that's represented by the blue line here. The blue line represents the outstanding debt on a year-to-year basis for this program, so that we can measure what that outstanding debt amount is, because there are limitations under state law as to what a community can have and outstanding loans inside what's called inside the borrowing capacity of a community. And right now it's 5% of the equalized valuation of town. For Barnstable, it's about 800 million. So, so you can see we're well below that. We put that line in there as CFAC recommendation the last time we looked at this, because you wanted to see what the outstanding debt was for these programs. So you can see here we have a problem. We don't have the financial resources to fund this level of capital commitment over the next 5 years. Just 1 year we can do FY27, and that's it. So some of the other options we can choose up here is we have two different override options here. One of them is adopt a municipal water infrastructure investment fund, which we've talked about in the past. This functions similar to the Community Preservation Act, where it adds a 3% surcharge on real estate tax bills. And that money goes into a special revenue fund, and it can be used for three different things. It could be used for sewer construction, drinking water, and stormwater improvements. So we could go to the voters. It requires a ballot initiative. You have to get the voters, a majority of the voters in town, to adopt or to approve such a fund through a vote. And if we were to do that, we could change this to yes if that did happen. You can see the fund becomes solvent once again, where the green line exceeds the red line on an annual basis. So the only downside of the challenge associated with a WIF is that it has three purposes. Again, drinking water, sewer, and stormwater improvements. And so there could be three different pressures placed upon, or a couple of additional pressures placed upon that funding source, as opposed to just sewer construction. This model assumes it's all dedicated to sewer construction. That's the way it's been set up. So the other,
Mark, is town council the one who determines where that money goes, or could water say, hey, we have this project and we're just going to the WIF for money? Kind of how does that, if the WIF is implemented, how and who gets involved in the distribution process?
So any resources that are in the special revenue fund that is created by a WIF are subject to annual appropriation by the town council. So at the end of the day, the town council is the one that has the authority to decide how that gets used. If it's going to be dedicated for sewer construction, it's up to them. But they can't restrict it by law. But they can certainly just say to drinking water projects and stormwater projects, no, we're not going to appropriate funds out of the WIF for those projects. You have to find another funding source. So it's their decision at the end of the day.
Mark, I've got a question. Will you go over this model with the town council as they are discussing the possibility of a debt exclusion?
So we did. At the January 8th town council meeting, we presented this model. We ran a few different scenarios to show them how it works. And recommended to them that at the end of that presentation that we have CFAC look at it again and have you guys report back on it similar to the way you did the last time. And they accepted that recommendation. That was one of our recommendations, and they accepted that. And so, this is why I'm bringing it back to you with a target completion date of around, I think, July 2026, to have this committee report back to the town council again on reviewing this model. And I hope the committee agrees to do so. If you don't want to do so, please let me know.
No, I think it's a worthwhile exercise and report. The question is, if we do it in July, it might be late to get it on the ballot for this year. So we would have to kick it down to 27.
Yeah, so we suggested as part of that presentation, one of the suggestions that recommendations that we made was that we considered having a special election in the spring of 2027 prior to the appropriations for the FY28 projects being acted upon by the town council, so we'd know whether or not we had the community support for either a debt exclusion or a WIF.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mark,
one of the other things I'm sorry, was there a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mark. I didn't mean to step on you. You had said that the width is 3%.
Yes,
there
up to 3%? It could be 1, 2, 2.5, 3. But you have to go back to the voters. If you set it at 1%, you got to go back to the voters, increase it from 1 to 2, and so forth.
I was just looking at the model, and with a 3% width, all of a sudden it becomes a very aggressive in a positive side. And
yes.
You might be able to I don't want to say get away with, because you do have to go back to the voters, but go with a smaller percentage, 1 or 1.5%, and not be as large as a vote or as difficult of a vote as it would be if it was 3%. That's just a thought.
Yeah, and one of the things we did mention was that with no more debt service outstanding on the community preservation program, they could go back to the voters and ask them to reduce that program. Right. As well. And, if you're going to implement a WIF, you could do a corresponding reduction to the CPA surcharge. But of course, that has challenges. That requires the voters to approve a reduction. There are constituencies out there, for the programs that particular surcharge funds. So that will be a challenge. Mm-hmm. Another alternative might be to do the debt exclusion as opposed to a WIF, because a WIF is permanent until you go back to the voters and ask them to eliminate it. Whereas a debt exclusion lasts as long as the debt lasts, and that's it goes away. And so if you change this field to yes, you can see, again, we're positive again with the debt exclusion. And what the debt exclusion option offers us to do as well is to drop this general fund contribution from 5.7 million to about 2 million. And every year on out after that as well, it's still maybe 2.5 million, but it still remains positive for the next 5 years of the program.
And the WIF is designated as water, whether it be infrastructure of the water, versus debt exclusion could be used for the sewer, and then if it has a long duration, it can be used for other things like infrastructure for schools.
WIF?
No,
the debt exclusion. Debt exclusions could be done a few different ways. And you could group projects together and bring forward a package to the voters specifically for the school department, which is, another question I was asked by one particular council as to whether or not they have this group look at the possibility of doing the debt exclusion for some of the school capital in addition to the CWMP. So you could package those up and have separate questions on a ballot for school projects or CWMP projects, and then for other town projects if you wanted to do that. And again, that additional taxing authority only lasts as long as those loans last, and then it goes away. Where the WIF, it's permanent. Just like the CPA, we've had that in place now since 1998, and there's never been any questions or any indication that the community wants to do away with that. And I think it would be very difficult to even try to do away with it right now, based on the constituencies that have been created over the years that support the particular purposes of that program. And so, you could, but you could use a combination of a debt exclusion and a WIF to keep this program going. We could do a debt exclusion for the next 5 years. And then for the FY 32 to the FY 36 programmatic in the next 5-year period, you could create a WIF and keep the program going then.
So Mark, that's kind of segues into a question that I have. The program where the way this model works is it's testing our solvency through FY 2031, right? What are the capital expenditures that are anticipated beyond FY 31 for this program to be complete?
I don't have them. They have not been developed yet by Public Works. I'm only working with what I have.
Do we have any sense of what that could be?
It could be another $370 million, like this 5-year period is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as gone out and costed, and of course, trying to predict what the costs are going to be, correct, years 6 through 10 are very arbitrary as well.
Right.
There's a lot that can change. So we've broken this down, and we've tried to manage the implementation of this program in 5-year periods. Mm-hmm. That has been our strategy from the beginning, and that's the way we're trying to manage the financial part of it as well.
Right. So, but I think we need to, so it seems to me that if we're looking at kind of solvency, we need to kind of make some, we should probably make some reflection on what will the needs be beyond what we're looking at this 5-year period, and how does decisions that we're making today impede or facilitate decisions that we might need to make in 5 years' time, associated with the needs that are going to that'll be realized in that period of time. So there is a nuance here, I think, that we shouldn't lose sight of.
Sure.
Yeah. This model is fantastic. I haven't had a chance to play with it, but one of the things that kind of occurs to me is, we're looking at quite a significant, long-lived and risk-exposed project with a CWMP, right? And I wonder how we're treating the model in the context of a controlled decision asset, or are we just using it as a spreadsheet? I think we're using it as a controlled decision asset. But there's probably, it would be helpful, for example, to have a much better understanding, and we can go into this as we're evaluating the model, in terms of how did we select assumptions that are being used, what are the key drivers to the model outputs for the sensitivities, and kind of look at things from a more robust perspective and in context, right? Not just looking at does the model work, but the context of the model.
Yeah, all great points, and that's my objective is to spend the time with the committee and go over all those assumptions. We did that previously, looking at what has been the historical performance for example, historical performance on meals and rooms, taxes. What happened during COVID? What if we were to have another economic downturn in year 6? And how would that impact the model if we ran different scenarios based upon those different assumptions that the committee at that time felt were possible scenarios that we may experience or encounter. So we can do that once again, and we can go through each individual assumption here and evaluate that assumption for soundness.
Great. So, and the other question I had is more from a governance perspective, right? Which is like who's kind of owning this model? Where is it kind of held in the systems? How are we tracking kind of versions? How are we documenting kind of changes that are being made to the model? How are we kind of explaining some of the assumptions that are being used for various model runs in respect of kind of key decision points? Is there a kind of a governance framework in place for how we're managing the model?
Yeah, so it's the model's held in finance. We update it on a regular basis as major events occur, and then we bring it to the town council and we update the town council on what those major events are and how has that impacted the financing of this program. And so we've been, meeting with the council at least once a year, more frequently recently, to review this and using it as a decision point to determine whether or not we can continue to go forward with any more appropriations under this program. So, as I mentioned previously, we've demonstrated that we have the resources in place to allow us to continue with the FY27 projects that are being proposed. But beyond that, I can't recommend that we go forward with any more projects until we find additional resources for the program, because we're just running too close to the possibility of a deficit, especially if something happens in terms of losing our funding or financing capabilities through the state revolving loan fund for some reason, which I haven't identified what that would be yet. Or a major protracted economic downturn that might affect the meals and rooms taxes. COVID affected those resources for a year, but then they came back stronger than ever, and we're at higher levels of rooms and meals taxes than we ever seen now than we have in the past. So yeah, it's housed in finance. We use it on an annual basis to measure whether or not I can recommend going forward funding the projects, and we update the town council on a regular basis. And
do we keep like versions, so version X, the date, or version 1.2, 1.4? Is there kind of a version and control mechanism in place?
And yeah, just I have the versions that were created when CFAC reviewed it, and then but beyond that, no, I don't, because honestly, I've run probably over 100 different versions of this thing, trying to fine tune the assumptions, and I saved the ones that CFAC wanted to see, and then of course I do have the versions back from when we were deciding to whether or not to go forward with the FY27 projects. So once we get that new 5-year capital listing of projects from Department of Public Works, I basically create a new version then.
Yeah.
And I do have those.
Mark, if I can suggest, maybe as part of the work that we do on the evaluation of this model, is to come up with some recommendations around how to use this, how to document things in a manner that will help you, right, in what you're doing, and the town council and the decisions that they're making, and others who are kind of evaluating it, kind of track changes, understand how assumptions are made, track versions, et cetera, and come up with like a governance framework for how we're holding this model going forward, if that would be of interest to you.
That sounds great, Remus. I'd love to work with the committee in developing that.
Great.
That's what I'm looking for from this group. I try to bounce all of these things off of this committee, and it's very helpful to get your recommendations and help us develop that governance model that you just spoke about.
So the only other comment I'd like to make, just thinking about one of the things that you said in terms of not having a good idea of around how things are going to pan out from an inflation perspective, et cetera. So when we would look at when in my previous role financing large infrastructure projects. We would sometimes frequently do our financial projections on a real basis, right? So we kind of strip out inflation, and that helps kind of manage. Sometimes it helps manage the numbers in a little bit more robust manner than kind of trying to assume, well, what's the inflation going to be for X or Y or Z assumption? When a real basis doesn't mean that you don't have any inflation whatsoever, right? So I think here you're assuming that healthcare costs, for example, will go up higher than some other costs, right? So there are ways of adjusting that and looking at things on a real basis, but that's also something to think about and see whether that has any value.
Thank you.
If I may add a comment relative to what Remus is saying, I think the model is excellent. I have seen the model for a number of years now, and there's all kinds of assumptions that you could come up with. And under any given any of the number of scenarios that come out, I think the answer is always the same, that there's going to be a shortfall at some point in time. The question is, how big is it? So I think we already know the answer, that there's going to be a shortfall. The question is, what does Barnstable do about it? And they only have two options. You need revenue or reduce costs. And I think both of those needs to be considered. And when you bring up that terrible topic of reducing costs, it will educate a whole lot of people to the need, and it will motivate them, I think, more towards an override, because I think that might end up being the correct answer. But in order to get to that correct answer, I think the town needs to consider both, which means every departmental manager should be requested to do two scenarios: 5% reduction, 10% reduction. What's the impact? Because if that turns out to be the answer for the town, you can't say, oh, I need 3 years to implement it. Every business that I've ever been associated with always has in their back pocket, what do I have to do if I have to reduce 5% or 10%? The town shouldn't be anything different. Now, that will cause an absolute nightmare to all the departmental managers, but that's part of managing business and town finances. It will absolutely get every departmental manager, and we probably have thousands of municipal employees. Every one of them will now suddenly be in favor of the override because their department is being scrutinized for 5 or 10% reductions. So
yes, thank you, Frank, for those comments. And you're right. I mean, that's always a question that needs to be answered, especially if you go to the voters asking for a debt exclusion override or a whiff. And there actually was a slide in the presentation that I did in January 8th that discussed, how we would go about approaching that. By evaluating discretionary versus non-discretionary costs and so forth. So we've talked about this at a senior management level, that this is the exercise that we will be undertaking, because we know we're not taking it for granted that anybody's going to approve any additional funding for this program. And more likely than not, the scenario is going to be, you're going to cut the budgets and you redirecting resources from the current operating budget to this particular program. And yeah, it'll be painful.
So is our departmental managers, or is it being done at a higher level, looking at what if scenarios if reductions are necessary?
Yeah, it's at the department managers level. This is part of the annual budget process development. We said this is coming. We're going to be expecting those discussions at that level, and asking departments to provide us what the impacts would be, focusing on their non-discretionary first of all, and then prioritizing those expenditures so that we can get a better sense as to which ones will have the least negative impact on our community in terms of service.
Thanks.
I'll stop sharing my screen, but
Okay.
thank you. And yeah, more to come on this matter. I just wanted to set the groundwork for something we'll be working on in the future. I know we're heavily into the review of the capital and soon the operating budget. So
I'm not sure if Chris has come back yet, but if not, we could move on to the next topic, which would be correspondence from committee members. So we can talk a little bit about our meeting of the CIP subcommittee. We met last Tuesday. We'll meet again tomorrow. I thought it was a good start from the perspective of listening to ideas that Remo and Jeremy had with regards to the approach to the report itself. Traditionally, which I tend to favor, that approach is been one to where we just take past data, reformat it, and present it in a 10 to 12 page report and submit that to the council and the town manager. However, we had a lot of discussion on, is that really the right way to do it? And is there room for improvement? Which the more you think about it, I think those comments made by Remo and Jeremy are spot on. And I think that tomorrow we might want to focus on ways in which we can look at the report from, rather than regurgitating existing information already presented to town council in different formats. Maybe we should focus more on some recommendations and some higher level thoughts or opinions, and turn the report into almost an opinion piece as opposed to a reformatting of existing data. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Depending on how we decide to address it, I would like to say if we do pick up a number of heavy topics, we might be asking for more resources to help us along the way. Right now we have 3 members, both Remo and Jeremy. Jeremy's had 1 year, Remo's brand new, so we might ask for some additional resources to help us in that effort. So, and that's all I have from
Jim, when do you meet?
last week.
We meet. When and where do you meet? Is it remote?
It's remote on Tuesdays at 4 p.m.
Okay.
So the whole idea, I think the approach we'll take tomorrow is let's take a look at the report and see if we can't open up the aperture, come up with a different format, and agree on what that would be, and then can start our assignments from there. Are there any other comments from or correspondence from committee members? Hearing none. Communications from staff.
thank you, Jim. So we are putting together about a $26 million general obligation bond sale in February. Tomorrow we will have a ratings call with Standard & Poor's to review this issue and to answer their questions regarding the town's finances. And soon after, I think the following week, we expect to receive their ratings report that's going to go along with this next bond issue. We'll share that with the committee once we receive that. So it's going to be a much larger bond issue for us this year than we've had the past couple of years. We've had a number of projects as part of the FY25 and FY26 capital program are under construction, and so we're issuing the loans to fund those particular construction projects.
But Mark, apologies for the maybe silly question, but when in your conversations, so on the CWMP, right, the program that we're anticipating is not discretionary as far as I understand, right? So we have identified what we want to invest over the course of the next 5 years. And then we have other unidentifiable sums that will need to be invested after that. Is that a correct understanding? So we don't have discretion there.
Yeah, we're not under any regulatory order or consent order by any judge or court at this point in time. However, there are regulations that govern the total maximum daily loads of nitrogen that can go into estuaries. And we have certainly, the regulators are watching. They expect us to implement this program over a 30-year period, which they've agreed to. They've reviewed our 30-year plan as far as the targeted reductions in those TMDLs over that time period, and they've given approval for us to proceed in such a manner. So
we have wiggle room. So what I'm hearing you say is like we have some wiggle room, but it's not discretionary.
You're talking about a topic that I am not an expert in. Okay, I'm a finance guy, not the technical or regulatory environmental guy. But
so the reason why I'm asking is how do we
regulatory order? We're not under. I mean, the DEP is not saying to us, you have to do this by such and such a date. We presented them a plan, and they signed off on that plan.
Yeah, so that's really helpful. How do we disclose that information to the rating agencies, right? Is it exactly how you've just presented it, in effect? Okay.
Yep.
And is that something
they read and they ask us, they read the articles in the newspapers. They know they're familiar with the plans that we've submitted. So they're very familiar with what we have.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks for the edification.
But also, Mark, the money that is being spent right now has real construction companies working on the sewer system, and you have momentum that is built there, and you don't want funding to go up and down where that momentum will be lost.
Right. Yeah. So, we got we got some really significant funding sources available to us to help us with this program, and we certainly want to take advantage of that while they exist. Those being Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund subsidies, 25% of our project costs. They're subsidizing. That's real money. And so that's every 100 million, that's 25 million from them. And, funding through the State Revolving Loan Fund. We've been participating in that program for years, and we don't want to lose our ability to continue to participate in that program. And now that we have a flow neutral policy, we should be eligible for 0% loans through that program.
Great.
Anything else, Mark, at this point?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
I think we're
enough. No.
So you can have a call for adjournment. Someone want to provide a motion?
Moved.
I'll second.
Jeremy, would you provide a roll call vote, please?
Certainly. Chris King?
Yes.
I don't know if Chris Lozanne's back. Frank Ward?
Yes.
Jim Sproul?
Yes.
Lillian Wu?
Yes.
Remus Pascoris?
Yes.
And I am a yes.
Okay, well,
Great.
our meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everyone.